Hello and welcome back to our read through of the New Testament in 2026. We are heading into the third week of April, and this week we are reading John chapter 3 through John chapter 7. Now, the Gospel of John kind of takes a separate look at who Jesus is compared to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's filling in a lot of the gaps, it's adding in other stories. John chapter 3 starts off with this really famous passage where a Pharisee named Nicodemus meets with Jesus kind of in secret and asks him a bunch of questions at night. And it's here where Nicodemus is asking, well, what's your purpose here? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to say? And Jesus tells him this: for God so loved the world that he gave up his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. And Jesus tells Nicodemus that he's basically here to help people overcome sin, receive eternal life, and that it is only available to people who are born again, that is, reborn in their spirit. Now, from there, it says that John the Baptist, who has now been continuing his ministry, he actually tells some more of his disciples that, hey, Jesus must become increase, I must decrease, and go follow Jesus, is basically what he's saying. And more of these people do so. In chapter 4, Jesus encounters a woman of Samaria. He's walking with his disciples. They stop along the path. They go ahead into the city to buy food. Now, Jews and Samaritans don't really get along, so there's a little bit of tension there. Jesus waits by the well, and this woman comes. And Jesus not only tells her everything about herself that he has no business knowing, other than the fact that he is Jesus, he is God, proving to her that he is at least a prophet. But then he reveals to her that he is the Christ whom they were waiting for. And she goes and she tells all of her friends, and then the Samaritans actually believe in Jesus when they start seeing the things that he does themselves. Now, in John chapter 5, we get a different story as Jesus is now going into Jerusalem on a feast, during a feast, and he comes to a man who's laying beside a pool where people have been apparently healed before. But this man is lame, so he can't get into the pool. And so Jesus just tells him, hey, get up, take your mat, go home. Like, go back. You don't need the pool. You don't need this water. The only issue is that it was on a Sabbath. And so this angers a lot of the religious leaders, especially the religious leaders in Jerusalem, because now all of a sudden this guy is carrying something on the Sabbath. And they said that was a big no-no. But Jesus says that it is something that he has to do. He says, my Father is working, and so I am working. And in this, Jesus claims to be equal with God. And there's a very specific verse where it says that the Jews were seeking to kill him because he not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Now, this continues in John chapter 6. We get the familiar story of Jesus feeding the 5,000, but John includes the extra detail that there was one young boy there who had the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, which was basically going to be his lunch, and he was willing to share it with everyone. And so that's where they got the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and it follows there that Jesus sends the disciples away while he continues to pray, and then he comes to them walking on water. And then we get into some of Jesus's teachings in John, and a lot of John's descriptions of Jesus's teachings, it's actually more of a debate. He's saying something, people are arguing with him. Jesus makes another claim, people are still arguing with him. And here at one point, Jesus claims to be the bread of life, like the manna from heaven that happened in the Old Testament, in the Exodus. And he says, I'm the bread of life, so you need to eat my flesh and drink my blood, obviously referring to what will be established as communion later on. And the people think that he's talking about cannibalism. And a lot of people leave him except for his 12 disciples. And Peter says, well, where else can we go? You are the one who has the words of life. Now, as we get to chapter 7 sees Jesus returning to Jerusalem for the Festival of Booths, a week-long ceremony that happens usually late September, early October. And he initially isn't planning on going down. His brothers are going down for the feast. Jesus is saying, well, it's not quite my time yet. But then Jesus goes down a little bit later, and he goes right to the temple, and he starts teaching again. And people are listening. And this leads to more debates that people see. And they were wondering, who is this guy? Some of them are theorizing this Jesus might be the Christ. There's people trying to arrest him. And there's slowly be growing a divide between all the people of Israel and within Jerusalem. Those that believe that Jesus could be the Christ or is at least a prophet, and those who believe that he is dangerous and his teachings are dangerous. And we see that divide very early on in the book of John. And it'll only grow wider and wider. But we'll have to pick up from there next week.